White Butterfly was released in 2009, and I've been playing it off and on for 16 years. This freeware space shmup has been part of my life for over a third of it. Probably you've never heard of it. It has 1 rating and no reviews on Moby Games. I could only find like 3 videos for it on YouTube. But if we're talking about how often I have returned to it, what a constant fixture it's been in my life, there's a chance it might be one of my favorite games. Which is weird, because I've never beaten the first stage. In fact, I usually get a game over in about 40 seconds. The game is a brick wall that I've just bashed my head against every few weeks for 16 years. But there's something that keeps pulling me in. I like the art, I like the music, I like the complexity of it. There are 5 different ships, and they each have 3 different weapons that all work differently. And these weapons actually level up as you use them, except they will only function at whatever your lowest level is. If one of them is still at level 1, they all still work at level 1. I think that's really cool. It's very Kinesia. But of course, I've never actually seen it in practice because I've never been able to survive long enough to ever actually level up all 3 weapons. And this whole time, I've been telling myself, if I want to see more than the first 40 seconds of the first stage, I need to actually give this game my time. Play it every day, practice, take notes, work the problem. And for 16 years, I've said, well, when I have the time, I'll get to it. And, well, here we go. The plan is to give it like 10 minutes a day. And I'm going to spend those 10 minutes working specific, smaller problems. Let's not worry about trying to beat the game. Let's start with just learning one of the ships. You know, I'm not good at Tekken, but I'm okay at Chainsaw Robot. So day 1, my problem is choosing my main. And kind of arbitrarily, I just do a run with each of the ships. Whichever one gets me a high score, that's going to be my choice. And that turns out to be Spinneret. Spinneret has beams, scatterfire, bombs. Beams appear to be high damage, but you have to hold still. Scatter does less damage, but lets you weave around. Bombs go boom, but are on cooldown. So the next couple days are spent getting a feel for this and constructing a sequence of responses to the enemy waves. First wave had these little low health guys, so let's do scatter. Then there's these big goofballs, blow them up with bombs. These guys will fire at your current position, but it's intermittent. Beams eat through them very quickly, very effectively, so I take each out and then reposition. Of course, the waves are mixed as the level goes on, so I have to get a little more flexible, more responsive, but I'm getting an idea of how each of my tools work. Well, the beams and the scatter. The bomb is kind of a mystery, because sometimes I can take out one of these big guys with one bomb, and sometimes it takes both my bombs, and I'm not really sure why that is. Partially this is because I'm inobservant. That sounds bad. What I mean is, if I try to look at a whole screen, it basically ceases to be information. It just washes over me. I need to actually zero in on a thing for a second or two to process it. That's just how my brain works. And in a game like this, stopping to look at the bombs gets me killed by something else. But that only matters if I care about getting killed. What if today is just about stopping to look at bombs? So let's do that. Now I started off thinking maybe it has to do with the position of the blast or how long the enemy is in the radius, but that's not consistent, so that can't be it. What it is that I was wrong. Those times when I thought I had killed them with one bomb, I had been hitting them with my other bullets first and not noticing. One bomb doesn't do enough damage to destroy them, but I think it does almost enough damage. So now I hit them once or twice with whatever else I'm already using, then I bomb them, and they're out of my way. So now I think I understand bombs, and I'm using them more effectively, and now instead of getting a game over in 40 seconds, I'm getting it in 60 seconds, 90, 2 minutes, 3. And this really is the key for me, making the problem smaller, and then working that smaller problem. Today I'm going to get to the boss. Today I'm going to figure out the bombs. Today I'm going to level up all 3 weapons. And when I do, It makes a sound. I didn't know it did that. And I didn't know this, but I've been wanting to hear that sound for 16 years. And eventually, I'm hearing it every day. The leveled up weapons are doing more damage now, but I don't know how much more. There's no numbers on the screen. And you know, I make board games for a living. There, all the numbers are visible. Part of me getting better at a board game is understanding it by looking under the hood, by having access to the numbers. Part of me getting better at Chainsaw Robot is being able to see the frame data. So it's a shame I can't see that here. And then I remember, actually I can, because I can just download the source code. So today I'm not even booting up the game. Today I'm going to look at the code. And I'm not a programmer. But after a couple of hours of scrolling through, identifying a keyword and searching for that keyword in the other files, I figure out that the internal name for the spinneret is P-type_bomber. My beams do 45 damage, plus the weapon level times 5, so it's plus 5 damage per level. Scatter is 300, plus 25 per level, which makes sense because it's a single shot that explodes on impact, whereas the beam is doing that damage per frame. While I'm peeking inside the guts of the thing, I noticed that there are 3 bosses listed for the first stage. So getting to the boss, I'm not near the end of it, I'm like a third of the way through. Every time I beat this first boss, I'm on my last ship, and I don't last very long in the next section. There are no checkpoints or continues within a stage, so once I lose my last ship, I have to do the whole thing over again. I need time to learn these new enemies. I need to go into this new zone with more lives to buy me that time. And I figure, okay, let's start small. My new problem is to get past the boss with 1 extra ship. Early in the second zone, I'm gonna score 2,000 points, which will earn me a 3rd ship, and that'll give me some more time. But, of course, as soon as I lose the first ship, I'm now 1 mistake away from failing in my goal, and I tense up, which makes me more likely to make a mistake. And when that inevitably happens, I go into the next run already stressed about it. And you probably know where this is going. I start making negative progress. Days where I don't get to the boss at all. Days where I lose my first ship on the first couple of waves, and at that point, why even bother? Restart. 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 You idiot. You should be able to do this. You've done it before. Restart. Sometimes it gets so bad the screen just becomes gibberish. My fingers are still pushing keys, but it doesn't feel like I'm playing the game because I'm not really thinking or processing anything. It's automatic. It feels like a tiny panic attack. And I've had this happen with video games basically my whole life. I usually play games on the easiest difficulty, not because I don't think I have the skill to play at higher difficulties, but specifically to avoid these episodes as much as possible. They're physiologically quite unpleasant, and they're a lot more intense when other people are watching me. It feels really humiliating having this panic in front of people. And sometimes they try to help me or comfort me, and I get uncooperative. It's like how my fingers keep pressing the keys. I don't feel like I'm choosing the words I'm saying. It's like my body is just doing things on its own. I don't have control over it, which is even more humiliating. And sometimes I play video games on my partner's channel, sometimes live, and mostly things go well. But there have been a handful of times where I have one of these episodes, and I can't be doing that. This is her livelihood.
You're gonna have to retry the.
Okay. When I feel it starting to happen, I try to slow it down. I try to stop it, but at that point, it's already happening. It's already too late.
Okay, so just relax.
I mean, the problem is I'm having a panic attack, and I'm trying to calm myself down. Is the problem.
So just relax. Take a deep breath.
Everyone watching me have a panic attack. After the last time this happened on a stream, I talked to my therapist about it. Asked her, why am I like this? Why do I do this? And she said in my case, it's probably a neurology thing. I'm like that autistic kid that gets overwhelmed and overloaded when there's a fire alarm or a police siren. And yeah, I'm actually exactly that autistic kid. I've always had a huge problem with both those things, and it's the same kind of panic response and processing issues and out-of-body experience. It was a lot worse when I was younger. You know, when there's a police siren now, I don't lose control when I'm in the car. And that's because I built resilience to it over time. There isn't really a trick to that other than continuing to do it. I need a problem to work that's not going to set me up for this kind of stress all the time. And I notice that when I lose my ship, it's usually not because I'm not dodging, but because I'm flying right into it without even seeing that it's there. The problem is that I'm moving reactively, focusing on what I'm moving away from instead of where I'm moving to. So let's try to shift that focus to very deliberately practice looking, then moving. It feels weird at first. Looking is almost an automatic, involuntary process. It's like suddenly having conscious control of my breathing or my digestive system. But it does highlight a couple of other areas for improvement. When I lose a ship, it's often just after firing a bomb, and that's because my eyes are shifting to the bomb. It's less of a problem when it's just these nerds, but when things are more hectic, that moment of diverted focus is fatal. So many times I lose my first ship trying to blow up this long man. There's just too many bullets around me and I don't really have anywhere to move. And that's because I'm playing near the bottom of the screen. That makes a kind of sense. The enemies are coming from the top of the screen. But that doesn't give me a lot of room to maneuver when they get all up in my business. So today, let's work on playing more aggressively, running out to meet the threat, weaving through the bullets instead of running away from them. And this means I can dispatch a lot of the smaller ships faster. That's important because each wave doesn't wait its turn, so anything you don't destroy is still on the screen until it works its way off. And by playing more forward and using the whole playing field, I stumble onto a strategy for the first boss that makes it a lot easier on myself. And suddenly that brick wall is shifting again. I get further than I ever have. I start to hear the boss music again, right before I buy the farm. And then a couple days later, I actually get to the second boss, and I last all of 8 seconds. The next time I get to it, a week later, this happens, and I hate everything about this. It is too many bullets, it is too fast, and I am too clumsy, at least when I'm moving at normal speed. Because there's one thing I've neglected the entire 16 years I've been playing White Butterfly, and that's the slow key. You move at half speed when you're holding it. And, I've always known it was there. For most of that time, moving too fast was not my problem. It was that my reaction time and my processing is so sluggish, but that's changed. Moving at half speed feels clumsy and awkward. I've gotten used to the way the ship moves normally. It doesn't feel like I'm moving the ship, it feels like I am the ship, the kind of embodiment that video games can be very good at. And this now feels less intuitive, like I'm learning to move all over again, and it often leads to me misjudging things. But eventually I add it to my toolbox, and I start to make progress on the second boss. I don't get there every day, and when I do, I'm often doing it by the skin of my teeth, but eventually I do clear it. This is followed, of course, by a game over early in the next section. And that just kind of deflates me, because it's taken me 2 months to get this far. It might be several days before I beat the second boss a second time, which will give me another fleeting chance to learn what the deal is with these new enemies. And I find myself wondering, not for the first time, why is White Butterfly like this? Not why is it hard, I understand that it's hard, but Celeste is hard. Celeste has unlimited lives, and it checkpoints you on every screen. Getting over it with Bennett Foddy is hard. When you make a mistake, you lose progress, sometimes a lot of progress, but it's not all your progress every time. And yeah, I know White Butterfly is an older game. It's operating in an older style. 3 ships, no continues, no saves. That's as old as the space shooter itself. But actually, White Butterfly does save your progress. Once you beat stage 1, you can start on stage 2, and it even starts you with your weapons leveled. When I ask, why is White Butterfly like this? What I'm really asking is, Why is this one long stage with 3 bosses, and not 3 shorter stages with 1 boss each and a save in between? I wondered if the game's creator ever talked about this, or about his games at all. Linley Henzell made a handful of space shooters in the Audis and a couple of unfinished RTS games. He's probably best known for a 1997 roguelike called Linley's Dungeon Crawl, which a later dev team turned into one of the most popular games of its genre, Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup. And that's kind of it. I haven't seen any games from him made in the last 10 years. He doesn't have a social media presence. As near as I can tell, he's done only one interview in 2010. The interviewer asked him, how do you make your shmups stand out?
By making them hard. My favorite gameplay mechanic is roguelike permadeath. A character who took hours to build up can be destroyed forever by a few poor decisions and a single turn of bad luck. And when you can't just reload a save from 2 minutes ago again and again until you get past any obstacle, decisions become meaningful, and the game stops being a quasi-interactive movie and becomes a game again. A designer who demands the players subject themselves to that level of cruelty has to offer something in return, and a good roguelike feeds the player with a constant supply of interesting decisions and rich, preferably randomized, environments. It's harder to do that in a shmup, but I balance the difficulty out with partly random stages that require a flexible, tactical approach, and by offering the player a choice of different starting conditions and playing styles.
And this makes something click. You know, I downloaded a lot of freeware shmups in 2009, but none of them have ever had this hold on me. What is it about White Butterfly? The only other game I've had this kind of relationship with, where I return to it again and again over the course of years and decades, and I keep saying one day I'll set aside the time to try to get better at this, is NetHack. I don't think White Butterfly feels all that much like a roguelike, but like those games, it gives you tools to be expressive in a space that's fundamentally hostile and unforgiving. Something about that appeals to me on a deep level, even though that kind of thing flares up my insecurities and my panic response. That's why I keep coming back to this frantic action game, despite having the reaction time of a sleepy rhinoceros. I don't know if I'm ever going to clear the first stage, but how far I shift that brick wall doesn't matter as much as the process of shifting it. I understand the game better now, understand myself better now, how I solve problems, how I process information, how I look at a screen, how I deal with frustration. And being able to articulate those things means I can work on them.